we are welcoming Tiffany Meier, NTD Evening News anchor and producer and host of the new NTD film Hollywood Takeover. She's here to give us the insight into the making of this film. And Tiffany, let me just ask you, the very first question I'm very curious about is, what came to the concept for this film? Why is it so important to make?
Well, thanks for having me. I think first off, often people talk about infiltration into the government and education and all that, but it all starts with what's called soft power or culture, and Hollywood is a huge piece of that. And so the Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated Hollywood because movies are very expensive and the China market is very big. So many studios are like, oh, if I can go get a joint venture with China, I can maybe get my film into China. It'll be fantastic. I can make a profit. But in that process, they started censoring to the point that they sacrificed everything that America stands for. And what that does is people go to the films to be entertained, and you don't have your guard up, right? You're just there to be entertained. So whatever message comes across, you start seeing that as what a different country is. So like we think of Russians, we think of, say, the Cold War, the Soviet Union. China has been portrayed as the hero in most films, and since 2012, no major studio has produced a film with China as the villain. So now we see that that's seeping into politics to the point that you have young people, especially, saying that socialism is so great or life in China is so good because you don't see what's actually happening inside China. Because even Hollywood is now complicit in basically whitewashing the Chinese Communist Party and the horrendous acts that happen in that country.
And Tiffany, I understand you just had a red carpet event for this film. So maybe share with us your experience there in Hollywood. What did you uncover? What did people share with you?
Yeah, so we did have a red carpet premiere in Hollywood. Some said that was kind of risky, but maybe because of the rain, no one came to protest, so that was good. But I think one of the most fascinating parts I found was in the process of trying to do this film. I was reaching out to all sorts of people, and one person told me, no one in the industry is going to speak to you because if they're seen associated remotely with NTD, not even my show China in Focus, just NTD in general, they'll be blacklisted from working in the industry. And I didn't realize NTD had such power. So that was pretty interesting. So basically, the people we did talk to were willing to speak to us and had already experienced being blacklisted in the Hollywood industry, but still wanted to tell the stories that they wanted to tell. So like the Sorbos, Kevin and Sam Sorbo of Hercules fame, they started their own studios, Sorbo Studios, and people like that who really want to stick to what Hollywood started out as, the place. Hollywood honestly invented America to the world. When people think of America, they think of those films of, say, the underdog becoming the hero at the end of the day. You don't see that anymore. Why? Because studios needed money. They started censoring and kowtowing to the Chinese Communist Party in that process, and it's really reshaped the whole fabric of the world and the way we perceive the world.
And as well, what did you hear from being rejected? What people would not say?
So some people were like supportive of our project, but didn't want to be a part of it. Just as the same point, they wanted to keep working in the industry, and a lot of people just didn't respond at all. And so that took a while to get people willing to speak to us. And I feel what's kind of funny is like now that I've been doing interviews about this documentary and stuff, suddenly there's a lot of people reaching out and being like, oh my gosh, like if you ever need more, I can talk to you for 17 hours about all the dirt I saw in the industry for 20 years. So who knows, if there's a part two, we might get some bigger fish in there.
And I'm just curious, at the red carpet event, what were people's reactions after seeing the film?
So we did have a panelist of 7 people who were in the film, and they all overwhelmingly supported the project and really thanked us for getting that story out there. Among the audience, it was also very positive testimonials that we received. Many people were likening it to, say, Hitler, in World War II. He was controlling the film industry as well and trying to promote a different type of propaganda, and relating to what we're seeing now with the Chinese Communist Party doing that with all of Hollywood basically and changing everything. So there's a lot of people really supportive of us getting the word out and how this really fits into what we're seeing everywhere, whether that's like the fentanyl, the Chinese nationals crossing the border, TikTok, all these different aspects. They're just really thankful that we brought awareness to them on this topic.
And you mentioned there were 7 people on the panel. Maybe you can introduce us to perhaps a couple of them.
Yeah, so we had Chris Fenton. He's the film executive. He's featured predominantly in the documentary because he was the one that really opened the door between Hollywood and China. Back then, it was through aspirations of making China more liberal, more democratic, really engaging. And then at the same time, he really thought that every dollar made there was helping American GDP. But then throughout the years, eventually, so actually, he got Looper and Iron Man 3 into China, which both made fortunes there. And then throughout the years, eventually he was punched in the nose metaphorically and realized that he didn't want his children to grow up in a Cold War and realized that this engaging with China wasn't actually helping America or the world. It was hurting the free world. So he was one of the panelists. We had Kevin and Sam Sorbo of Hercules fame. Those have their own studios. Kevin was also in Soul Surfer, that's very famous. And he says he gets stopped in the street for that film, not the Hercules franchise that lasted over a decade. We also had Casey Fleming. He's the CEO of Black Ops Partners, an intelligence cybersecurity firm. Steve Yates, he was a former national security advisor to the White House. He was also part of Radio Free Asia, and he now is part of the America First Policy Institute. We also had Jason Jones, who is a film producer and tells the stories that he really wants to. He knows like everyone around the world and just really spends time producing the films he wants to, and especially shining a light on what's happening inside China or highlighting the voices who aren't heard normally. And we also had Christian Toto, who's a film critic for over 20 years. He is hollywoodandtoto.com is his site. It's a very fun site. He was also there and had some very good insights on what happened to Hollywood through all these years and how it became less and less American.
So you mentioned Chris Fenton was able to get Iron Man 3 and Looper into China. So I'm wondering, is there more loyalty to China than the US when it comes to Hollywood?
You could say that. Chris Fenton didn't think that in the beginning. He really felt that this was helping the two countries come, the two superpowers come closer together, and with the engagement that it would become more liberal and all of that for communist China. But with, say, Looper and Iron Man 3, just to get past the Chinese censors, they had to change a lot of the story. So Looper, originally the script, it involves time travel, which is a subject that's banned in China because the Chinese Communist Party likes to control everything, including the past and the future and the present. And so originally in the script, the Gordon Levitt's character wants to go to France. That's his utopia. That's his dream. The final version is not that. The utopia is China. So that was a major change. And that had the audience clapping, that had the Chinese communist censors clapping when they got to that part of the film. So that was a huge change. But think about what that does to you psychologically. You're like, wow, China's the future. China's the place everyone wants to go. It has an impact on the way you view the world. And then with Iron Man 3, they inserted a Chinese doctor, Dr. Wu, to save the life of Tony Stark. So think about that. It's like the Chinese Communist Party's skills, which they probably stole, which is not shown in the film, but their skills is what's saving this hero, Tony Stark, right? So that was another huge change. And then eventually one day, Chris Fenton was arguing on the phone with Marvel, trying to get this massive change in the script. And afterwards, his wife was like, whose side are you on? And he was like, America, of course. Every dollar made there is helping America, all these jobs, like all these different things. And she was like, it just really sounds like you're feeding the beast. You're just, enabling the Chinese regime. And eventually he realizes that's what was happening. But many people didn't realize that. And, they just want to get their bottom lines. And China has a massive market. For instance, back in the day, Pacific Rim, it had a budget of $190 million. It only made a little over $100 million in the US box office. But that film did get into China, and it made $111 million in the China box office alone. So just by getting that film into China, it doubled its box office profits. So many studios were just like, if I can get a film into China, I'll make a profit. And in the process, these studios gave up human rights, democracy, everything that America stands for.
You know, Tiff, I have to say that the movie I've seen as well myself, and it is a very good movie. It's going to be on Epoch TV, and I think all of our viewers should have a look if they're interested on this topic. But thank you so much for your time today, Tiffany. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
It's great being with you. Thank you.